Good morning.
Morning.
Good
Hello,
morning.
everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks all for joining us. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce ourselves here. My name is Lisa Uematsu. I'm the treasurer of 33rd District PTA. We have Emmy, our tech guru, who's our financial secretary. And then we have the awesome Flora Farzad, who's our tax and government filings consultant. And we sent you the slide deck, so you should have all this information. We'll be sharing it on the screen, but remember that you always have access to it already. And so we have our contact information on here. So if you ever need to get a hold of any of us after the training, then feel free to go ahead and send us an email. Let me just go ahead and I'm going to kick off a quick poll just so we can see. Okay. Oh, good. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Okay, so we have a lot of first year people, so thank you for coming. I hope this is helpful to you. We have officers who are not financial, and so thank you for coming because it's always helpful for other people on the team to know about financial stuff. And then we've got some veterans, 1 to 4 years and more than 4 years. So thank you for coming in. There is a little bit of new information this year, so hopefully that will be worth your time. This training kind of assumes that you know everything that's basic, the unit level training. And so what we aim to do, and feel free to, after this training, let us know if there's other things you feel like we should have covered, but we're aiming to show how council officer duties are different from unit duties. So for instance, as a council treasurer, you're going to be taking care of council's financials, but also on top of that, you're going to be keeping an eye on all the units underneath you, training them, making sure that they're supported and they know what to do, making sure that they're turning in their paperwork to you so that you can forward it on to 33rd District. So there's that whole other level that a lot of times doesn't get covered in the unit level trainings. As far as questions, we're going to ask you to put any questions in the chat, and we'll handle as many as possible in the chat during the presentation. And then also we'll have a break or two in order to review some of those questions and then take any other questions. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Emmy, who will be talking about how councils need to submit their payments to 33rd District. If you're ready, Emmy.
Yep. Hey, good morning, everybody. So we'll start off with slide 3 here. And this is remitting funds to 33rd District PTA. So please submit 3 copies of the 33rd District PTA remit form whenever you're turning in money. Also, keep an eye out for deadlines on the RSVP forms to get the best price. And membership contests have strict deadlines, so please keep an eye out for those as well. When we met in person, council presidents were able to bring checks and remit forms to the council presidents meetings. And during those times, you would want to coordinate with your council presidents for them to bring the checks and remits to the meeting. But now, since we're not meeting in person, the remaining ways to turn in money include by mail, dropping them off at the office, or by Zelle payment. So on the slide, it references to see the separate handout, but the handout isn't quite updated yet. So we're working on that and double checking the details and hope to share the updated version with you soon.
And actually, I'm going to barge in right here. And if you as a council think you're interested in using Zelle to submit payments to 33rd District, can you just pop into the chat and say, yes, Zelle, or whatever, something so that we can look back and know that that's something that's of interest. I know that not all banks do Zelle for business. A lot of them will do Zelle for personal. Fewer banks do Zelle for business, so it may depend on your individual bank. I know obviously Bank of America does. I believe Wells Fargo and possibly Chase do. There might be some others. But yeah, if we can see who's interested and we can figure out who we need to get this information to, then that would be great. All righty. Now I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I'm going to share this. We're not going, oops, all righty. So there's the tips and hints for when you're remitting funds to 33rd District. You should have also received this when we sent out all the handouts. So Emmy, did you want to point out some key points from the tips and hints, or shall we just?
No, you can keep going. I'll just look for slide number 4.
Okay, all righty. So one thing that's different this year is that we're only requesting 3 copies of the remit with any checks instead of 4, because we've figured out that the 4th one, which was generally for our membership chair, is not really necessary. Let's see. Since you have this information, you should be able to review it. Just make sure that when you do your remits that your totals add up correctly. Make sure that the check has the 2 signatures and that the total of the check matches the remit. Because we checked with our good, excellent office director, Vera Johnson, and she says she gets a few and all the mistakes tend to be missing a signature or the numbers don't match either on the remit itself or between the remit and the check. And I'm just gonna stop sharing that and Emmy can jump back on.
Okay, so we'll continue with slide number 4 with the council remit. So this is the actual remit form here, and also where to mail it. If you're going to be dropping it off, the physical address is actually different. It's 5629 Pierce Avenue in Lakewood. It's this bungalow-like looking building to your right as you enter the driveway to the parking area. And there's also a little mail slot that you could drop it through. But if you want to pick up something or ask questions or drop off something larger than the mail slot size, please be sure to call ahead. So again, if you're going to mail something, use only this PO box address. Please don't mail it to the physical address. So the remit form already has all of your units listed. So all you have to do is just enter the numbers, and you can use the formula tab to total the numbers, rows and columns already formulated to add across and down. And as Lisa mentioned, we've updated the remit form. And I guess this is going to be emailed to the council presidents and council treasurers later. So also the insurance isn't included anymore on the form because for this year, the insurance will be paid online via the AIM insurance portal. And similar to the workers' compensation report as well, it's going to be filed online and any surcharge due will be paid directly to AIM. Okay, so on this form, you can see the supplies and the other column here. They have 2 asterisks next to them. So for these items, there's a section at the bottom here, also in gray fill-in, where you're going to put a description of the type of supplies. So, or other. So for example, for Roosevelt Intermediate here, we see that they paid $5 for supplies. So down at the bottom here, it says Roosevelt, but it's kind of cut off a little bit, but it would say like 1 treasurer book, something like that. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide here. So this basically lists the column heading names that are on the remit form. You'll have a number of members, dues, founders days, supplies, and other. For others, you can enter the dollar amount. of other remits like for reservations, for district conferences or workshops. And again, please don't forget to enter the description on the bottom of the remit. Okay, so let's see, for this other type of events, you can also use a separate check for reservations. If you do, no council remit is needed. So you can use the tear-off form or the slips or a spreadsheet listing to provide the attendee information. That would be sufficient. But please make sure your council president is getting the flyers to you before distributing them, so you can have some input regarding the due date to your council. Okay, so moving along to slide 6 here, submitting RSVPs and reservations. So here's a sample of a RSVP report or spreadsheet. One reporter spreadsheet listing each unit is preferred rather than a whole bunch of individual copies. So just put everybody on this one sheet here. So once again, if you're only submitting the RSVPs or reservations to 33rd District PTA, you could forego the district remit, the one we talked about before. And so similar to the district remit though, for this RSVP and reservations, print 3 copies and submit it along with a check from your council. Okay, moving along. And so RSVPs and reservations continued. So please include the following if you're submitting RSVPs to us in this report format: your council name, the full name of the person attending, their unit name, or a council if attending on behalf of your council. So in this example provided, the workshop session also includes lunch, so that information is listed as well here. Okay, going on to membership. So please remit membership dues in a timely manner. The amount forwarded will include your district, state, and national dues. And be sure to coordinate with your membership chair or VP to make sure that the numbers are accurate and that there aren't any duplicates. One thing to advise your units is to separate the membership dues in the records of financial reports by reflecting the amount of dues that stays with their PTA and the amount of dues that's forwarded through PTA channels. Also, if you're using totem e-memberships, you'll want to consider creating an e-membership dues income line item in your financial records and reports. And we have a few other things to take note of. So please cross-check the memberships reported on the audit checklist with your council membership records. And also, as also previously discussed, membership contests have really strict deadlines. So for those of you who are really competitive and want to make sure you get all of those points, please make sure you make a note of those dates so you don't want to miss them. And advise your units to also include a line item to record the checks that they're forwarding dues to council. So for example, you have pass-through expenses, which is different, and you'll want a separate line item for the money spent on promoting membership. And one important thing too is please remit memberships to district monthly, even if you only have one. Okay. All righty, so I think we can move over to slide 9. So sometimes there's a membership that you get from a unit in June, for example, that you might not be able to forward until July, the start of the next fiscal year. So for these, you'll want to consider having a separate line item on the budget or your reports for previous year items. And you'll want to encourage the units to, forward these unremitted memberships from the previous year. And generally reimbursements from the previous year expenses, they're discouraged. But at the same time, you want to be understanding. There's extenuating circumstances. So we kind of want to be understanding in that respect. So now that we're all experts on how to fill out a remit, I'm going to hand it back to Lisa so she can lead us in an activity to test your knowledge.
All righty, let's see, make sure. Okay, here we go. Are you all able to see the sample remit and check that we have there? Okay, so there are things wrong with this. So if you can find any of the errors, go ahead and drop them in the chat. And I'm here with my answer key, so I'll make sure how many of them you get. Check missing one signer. Yay, Margaret, good job. Totals don't match. Okay, good. Check amount does not match the total due on the remit. Yes. Yes. Okay, you guys are making the chat explode here. Let me make sure I'm seeing everything. No supply detail. Okay, that's true. Yes. Madam President, well, that was just a little funny name, so I don't know that I would consider that a mistake. Member number doesn't add up. Good. Good catch. Check number missing on form. Yes, good. Okay, let's see. I feel like there is one more that hasn't been caught. Let me see. You see it here yet? Give you like dues off. Okay, Liz, what do you mean by that? You want to unmute yourself? Are you able to unmute yourself? Okay.
Yeah, because it says 2 members and it only shows 475.
Liz is a superstar. Yes, excellent. Okay, you guys are great because you just got everything. So hooray for you. Okay, let's stop sharing. And
I had that in the chat as well. Date Street dues off.
oh, okay.
I just want credit where credit is due. And we're done.
Okay, good job, Sandy. All righty, excellent. So I think we're gonna zip back on to our slideshow here. Okay.
Okay, so here we go. We're zipping away. Okay, so now we're on slide 10, sending reports and control logs. So here, you'll notice council budgets are due September 30th. Please send them to the emails listed. Audit reports, which include an audit for each of your accounts, plus the audit checklist and recommendations, are due October 17 and March 13 to the emails listed. The table here also illustrates electronic copies and their due dates. So for example, the PTA annual financial report is due October 17. So this date though is when it's due to 33rd District. So please plan accordingly and ask your units to submit to you so you'll have enough time to submit to 33rd District. So basically, other than your council budget, everything else, the audit reports and the items in the table, you'll be turning into 33rd District, not just your own council reports, but those of your units as well. All righty, so we'll just keep zipping along. And Lisa, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Okay. All righty, here we go. So every month, your council presidents are going to get some reports from 33rd District PTA. And so that hopefully coordinate with your, if you're the treasurer or on the financial team, coordinate with your president to see if that you can get a copy of it. And the first thing is the control log. So Vera, our wonderful office director, she diligently checks off stuff as it gets submitted to her. So each council has this spreadsheet that checks off, oh, did the unit turn in their federal tax filings? Did they turn in their audits? So that way you have a record of what we have, and then you know who you should follow up with, or you can double check and see, oh, maybe that you received it, but you needed to forward it on to 33rd District. The membership reports, That's something that the president also gets, and then hopefully you as the treasurer and the membership chair can look at it and double check the numbers and make sure that it adds up to what you're expecting the totals to be. And then the everything reports, this is very useful. It's got all of your units and all of their tax ID numbers, their PTA ID numbers. So if you need to kind of do some research, you have all that information handy right there. And I think that is it. So actually the council presidents will receive those shortly before the council president's meeting. And so if you know your president has gone to a council president's meeting, then you can kind of poke them and say, hey, can I get a copy of these reports? All righty. So those meetings are usually mid-month, so you know when to bug your presidents about that. And so I think that's it for now. If we have any questions on what's gone on so far, you can go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand. Actually, raise your digital hand because I can't see everybody because there's no, because the screen share is sort of taking up everything. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and continue on with Flora's presentation. If you do have any questions, then go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Flora.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to cover the audit portion. And I think this first sentence really is very clear and concise and shows the entire purpose of the audit. Why do we do the audit? So whoever wrote that was just really nailed it. And I'm just going to read it because ordinarily I like to talk, but I want to read this. The role of the council unit auditor and the financial team is to reasonably ensure accuracy of the financial data and safeguard PTA assets, which is cash, by complying with approved PTA policies and procedures, ensuring transparency, implementing the decisions taken by the association, and protecting tax-exempt status of the unit and council. And I wanted to stress the word reasonably, because we are not investigators, we're auditors. We look at what is given to us and we report. We don't assume anything or write anything beyond what is in front of our face. So we can only reasonably ensure these sorts of things. So that's why that word is included. As far as the qualified auditor and the review committee, the insurance policy requires that if a auditor is not qualified, meaning a CPA or a background training certification in auditing and the review of accounting records, then we will need a review committee. This is an insurance requirement. And the review committee can be one person, at least one person, plus the auditor. They are appointed by the board and must be approved by the association. If a unit that you're responsible for doesn't have a review committee, the council auditor may be the review committee, may fill that role. So you ask them to look for someone diligently. Don't tell them you can do it right up front. Just say, look for a review committee. If they come up short, they can't find anybody, then you as the council auditor can do that. And you're kind of doing it anyway, because when you get your unit audits, there may be errors. The most common error is they haven't signed it. The auditor didn't sign it, the review committee didn't sign it. Make sure that they sign it. They also have to at least put the adoption date from the board adoption date. And so lots of times they don't have that. And the district will require at least the adoption date. The association date can be missing because a lot of units don't have regular association meetings. So I'm going by, and you're going to make sure too that the ending balance on the previous audit is the beginning balance on the audit that you're reviewing. If there's a difference between ending and beginning balances, that's a big problem, and that needs to be investigated. There's nothing more sacred to internal control, good internal control, than the ending beginning balance thing. So I think we can go to another slide. See, it's all, I keep, going on my own. Okay, so here's the audit report, and you can see that the balance on hand has to equal under the bank reconciliation and the treasurer's report. So if you look at the top half saying balance on hand at 6/30/20, 325, under the top half, that's a treasurer report. So that's the accumulation of 6 months of the treasurer reports. The bank reconciliation is the last month bank reconciliation. So that's why they should be equal. Okay. Also, there's a new form. We want to make sure you use the new form. And the difference is it has 5 classifications there, where it says correct with no recommendations, correct with the attached recommendations. That's a new category. Oh, it's about a year or so old. So you want to make sure that you use that particular form. Okay. And also you want to review those audits to make sure like the last check number that was on the last audit, the following check is the first check on the new audit. So it's just ensuring continuity, that everything is going in order. Okay. We can go to the audit checklist. And I want to put an emphasis on the audit checklist and for you to share it with your unit treasurers too. This has always been viewed as an audit report, but it can also be a monthly treasurer checklist. So you have the top part there where you check off, all the documents that was received. So you want to make sure your units check off what they received from their unit. But then beginning balance records on down, those are questions that the auditor is going to be looking at when they're looking at your financial records at the unit. And so if your treasurer looks at this list and checks off, like at the end of each month or every other month, that everything has been signed, I got 2 signatures on a check request, this matches, that matches, then you're good to go. You've done everything, you've answered all the questions, you've made sure you've got everything in order. So there should be no surprise finding. So I would highly recommend that you inform your unit treasurers and your council treasurer to use this form as a month-end treasurer checklist. Okay. Yes, and we already talked about review for errors in the audits. So just make sure they sign it. And there's an board adoption date. Those are the 2 things that are usually missing.
Okay, Flora, are we ready to go into our what's wrong with this audit exercise?
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Okay. Wow, so excited. Yes. Okay. So if a unit turns in an audit like this to you, instead of just, throwing it in a pile or forwarding it on automatically to 33rd District, you want to just give it an eyeball and see if there's anything that is wrong that maybe should be looked at before you consider that the audit is actually complete. So if you see anything wrong, oh, look at that, Sandy's already jumping in.
That's Sandy.
Yes. I guess you guys know the drill. If you see anything, then put it in the chat.
Yeah, January 10th, no. Okay. Because we know the last audit was as of December 31st.
Okay.
So that's correct.
Let's see, no committee review, right? Dates covered.
Balance on hand, wrong. That's right, they don't match. EOH and bank balance don't match.
Balance on hand and bank balance.
Missing review date. Yes, the review committee date is not there. Account name is wrong. Not sure.
Are you talking about where it says checking, Liz? Because that is, okay, that's actually correct, because the audit forms used to have you put the account number on there, and then people decided, hey, maybe we don't want our bank account numbers floating all over paperwork. So you can just put a name to differentiate it. If you have multiple accounts, like a savings account or a PayPal account or whatever, then that way you know which account you're reviewing, but it doesn't have your financial information on there.
Yeah. The executive board adoption date is after the association date. Very good.
Ooh.
Check number 116, check 170 is reviewed as well. That's right. We have our check range going up to 1116, but we have an outstanding check of 1117. So that's incorrect. Okay. More e-members than total members. Bingo, right on. Very good. Total members is lower than e-members. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Have I seen?
Oh,
Okay.
there's the one sneaky one, Flora, which I just now remembered.
The sneaky
The
one.
sneaky one up at the top.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Okay, we're
That
just
is
gonna
the-
assume.
Yeah, that's the IRS EIN number. It's missing a digit. And you may think, oh, that's not important. But sometimes people use that number to look up governmental entities, see how they're doing and stuff. So we want to make sure that number is correct. So make sure your EIN number is correct. Okay, but otherwise, I think you did very well. Thank you so much.
Righty. Okay, I will stop sharing. So we're moving on to your role as a council financial officer. And again, I want to stress that it's different from just being a unit financial officer, because in addition to the typical handling the books and making sure that the reports are all done, you're sort of a liaison between your units and the 33rd District PTA. So you're going to act as a conduit between the unit and the district. You're going to be making sure that your units are well trained and that they're complying with PTA rules and guidelines, that they're doing their treasurer's reports regularly, that they're doing their audits. You're going to provide training and resources to them. So that can be making sure that they're aware of the financial trainings that we have at 33rd District, or that California State PTA has during convention. But also, it's great if you as a council can provide training for your units, because you're sort of on the ground with them. So you may have a better idea of what issues they're having, what concerns that they have, that at our level, we may not be able to address those individual concerns. So if you're not already doing trainings for your units, please consider doing so, and feel free to use any of the materials that we have for unit training. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you can sort of look at it and give it a spin that will work for your particular units. Okay. Another thing is that money is passed through what's called through channels. So if units are turning in membership dues, not insurance anymore, but Founders Day donations, then you're going to go ahead and pass that along to us. Same thing with reports, with audits, and annual financial reports, tax information, pass those along. And then you're also passing down information from 33rd District to your units. So if there are deadlines that, say some membership dues need to be turned in to 33rd District by, I'm just going to pick a random date, by say March 20th, then you'll make sure that your units know that they need to turn in dues to you in time for you guys to be able to process it and then issue a check to us. Okay. And then going back to that control log I mentioned a while back, you just keep an eye on that, and you can use that as a tool to make sure that your items are being received and recorded by us, and also as a tool to double check to see what your units have been turning into you. And just like what we did with the audit, we're going to ask you to please check for accuracy before forwarding all items. We want to make sure the audits are correct. We want to make sure that your remits that you give to us are correct. Okay. Next slide. Okay, here we have some websites that you can go to for resources. We have our website. We also have our YouTube channel where we have videos of past trainings. So that's always useful if you have people that missed, aren't able to attend current trainings, then they can go and look back at the YouTube channel. And that's not just financial trainings, but there's, I believe, parliamentarian trainings and other trainings on there. There's California State PTA and the National PTA's website. Also, I'm going to put in a plug for on the California State PTA website. They have the insurance guide on there, so that's important to look at too. Okay, and then if we can move on to this. I love this flow chart. It's very useful. And sometimes, especially new financial officers at the unit level, they kind of get overwhelmed because they see all these policies and procedures that we're throwing at them and whatever. So this is just a nice visual aid to go, okay, am I able to write this check? Okay, was it approved in the budget? Has it been authorized by the association? Has it been authorized by the board? This is something where I was going to say it's not exactly black and white because it's colored, but it's just a way where people can just double check and go, wait a minute, am I doing the right thing by issuing the check? Okay, so feel free. This is on the California PTA website. So I would recommend you going ahead and sharing it with your financial officers actually at the council level and at your unit level. Okay. Electronic membership. Okay. One good thing about the totem system is the electronic membership system that California PTA has set up, is that people can join without writing a check. So once people join on Totem, then their dues, they get automatically split up. So the unit gets their portion, council gets their portion, district gets their portion, and then state gets the state and national portion, and then they manage somehow to forward that national portion on. So that, if you end up having a lot of people joining by way of Totem, then that eliminates a lot of work on the unit and the council, and as far as having to forward dues on up and keeping track of what you forwarded and what you haven't. I know that Nan, our membership chair, is pushing to get more units and councils signed up with Totem. So expect to hear from her about that. And then if you do join Totem, just consider who will be reporting the e-memberships in your financial reports, either your treasurer or the financial secretary. And if you need help joining, then contact Nan, our membership director. Okay, next. Yes, Nan is awesome. Okay, e-commerce. Okay, this is a huge wall of text. I'm not going to read through it. I did indicate there where it is in the toolkit where you can actually maybe read it in a nicer format. But I think some of the key points are that ideally you'd want to have a separate bank account for any e-commerce, because if you have any e-commerce direct connected to your general checking account, then that's a vulnerability where if someone has your banking information, then it's possible that, well, not the company you're connected with, but if they get hacked and they have access to your banking information, then your total general checking account is vulnerable. So if you have a separate one where you just keep a nominal amount in there as necessary, then that reduces your liability. Our insurance coverage does not include cyber coverage. So that's another thing. If something goes wrong, then it's possible that it's actually very probable that it won't be covered by insurance. So that's a risk that you're taking. I think the only sort of cyber related incident that they cover would be computer and funds transfer fraud, where a scammer poses as a trusted board member and then asks you to transfer money or buy gift cards or whatever to send to them. But really, I would hope that all of you would be savvy enough to go, hey, this is weird that they're asking for a transfer and they're not going through that whole, can I write this check business, right? So that's another thing to always refer back to that, go, okay, well, this is not having the approval of the board or the association. So I'm just going to stop right there and assume this is a scam. So even though I think we do get a little bit of leeway as far as that, I would hope that we never need to take advantage of that. Okay. I guess one thing I'm going to state that person-to-person payment apps are not allowed. So I'm going to say specifically, if anyone's asking if they can pay by Venmo, Venmo is a person-to-person app. So PTA should not be using that. Okay. And let's scooch along to the next slide. Again, the separate bank account is recommended. But when you're setting up a separate bank account, you want to make sure that you're aware of any bank fees or possible limits on the number of transfers before you actually commit to opening the account. Because if they end up charging you a monthly fee or a per transaction fee, then maybe you need to go shopping for another bank. I don't know. Also, if you have multiple bank accounts, and Flora will love me for saying this, a separate audit is necessary for each bank account. You don't just do one big lump sum of all of your assets and do an audit of that. If you have an e-commerce account, that gets its own audit. General checking account gets its own audit. Savings account gets its own audit. If you have a PayPal account, really that should be audited too. Okay. And then if you're making any electronic transfers for payments, then there's two forms you need to fill out. You would fill out the normal payment authorization form, and then you would fill out an authorization to transfer form. I actually am getting confused here. This is actually to transfer between accounts, but so I'm going to back up, ignore that last bullet point. I'm adding something extraneous. So make sure that if you're making e-payments to, say, a vendor, that you're filling out both the normal payment authorization form and there's an authorization to pay by EFT. And then that actually has a space for 2 check signers to sign on. So there's that. And then what this bullet point really means is that if you're end up, say, collecting a bunch of money in your PayPal account and you say, okay, there's a bunch of money, I should transfer it over to the general checking account, then there's an authorization to transfer form that's required. And then that actually is a transaction that needs to be approved at an executive board or an association meeting.
I think the PayPal you do drawdowns. You're not exactly transferring. So I never realized that. I think I'm learning something new, but ordinarily when I do PayPal, I just draw down at the end of the month, the money from PayPal too. So this is kind of new. Even the authorization, like you said, a transfer between the checking account and the savings account, I would always have the transfer done and two people sign it, but I didn't realize it had to be approved at an executive or association meeting. So I don't know if that's new for everybody else, but you know, that will take some time and slow down the process, but I guess there's a reason for it.
So I guess you got to plan ahead.
Then you would tend to have one account and close the other.
And
Okay.
I'm just so proud that I just brought up something that Flora didn't know. So there you go.
See, that's why everybody should come to all the trainings, because no matter what, you learn something new. Always.
All righty.
Thank you,
Okay.
Lisa.
Okay, electronic check deposits. So especially when COVID was roaring at its height, then electronic check deposits did come in handy, but make sure that you are thinking through all the possible issues, the amount that should remain in the e-commerce bank account, again, checking with your bank on their policy regarding the quantity of electronic deposits allowed per month. And then a policy on the storage or destruction of checks for deposit, because if you're actually depositing checks electronically, instead of giving it to the bank, then you still have it in your physical possession. So eventually you're gonna want to figure out, okay, people do not want us keeping their financial information indefinitely. So you got to figure out a system of clearing things out every once in a while. Consider which financial officers can access the bank's electronic deposit feature, and they should be a signer on the bank account. And then, since this is all new, you may need to figure out or create a policy that reviews the electronic deposits and make sure that you're being transparent on the one hand, but then also protecting people's financial information on the other hand. Okay, next slide. Okay, electronic bill payments. See, this is where I jumped ahead of myself. The second bullet point is what I started launching into a couple of slides ago, where in order to do an electronic bill payment, you need both the usual authorization for payment and the EFT bank bill payments authorization form. Okay, and let's see. Oh, and then again, I've already talked about the insurance that we have, not including cyber insurance coverage. So let's just skip past this slide, Emmy. I'm repeating myself now.
Okay, how about a poll? Are we ready for a poll or not?
Oh,
yet?
sure. Okay. A poll about everybody's favorite subject, tax filings. So there are multiple, you can choose multiple answers on this. Okay. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and end this poll and share the results. So we have some people that haven't filled out any government filings for a PTA, and no shame in that. And we'll actually, I believe closer to October, we'll be having a tax filings review, and then we'll share the resources that California State PTA has as far as how to prepare some of the electronic forms. I have prepared e-postcards. So we have some people with some experience with both the electronic federal, electronic state, and then the RRF ones. And then I have prepared or had a tax accountant prepare forms, which, yeah, once you get into the 990, the 990 EZ and the 199, it gets a little more complicated, and we are volunteers, so no shame in having a tax accountant do that for you. Just make sure that if you get a tax accountant that they are familiar with nonprofit policies and filings. Back when I was a council treasurer, I'd see some crazy stuff where the accountant would check off the box that the PTA was a school and just crazy stuff. So you just want to make sure that your accountant knows what they're doing. And then here's a good thing. I know how to find out if my council or units are up to date with their filings. So this is kind of an important thing, because sometimes you're trying to find out whether your units are actually filing stuff and they tell you they have, but you're like, then how come you're not forwarding it to us? So you're actually able to double check and see whether they filed the federal postcard, or their RRF1. So that is something that we'll be sharing with you. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay. And with the mention of taxes, of course, that means we got to talk to Flora. You ready, Flora?
Okay. I am.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so PTAs are tax exempt organizations, and that means they don't pay taxes as long as they file the federal and state tax returns and the Department of Justice. Everybody knows about federal and state, but sometimes they forget there is a Department of Justice. And so all those filings are due November 15th. Don't wait. After your audit is complete, or your unit audits are done first, then you do the taxes, because you don't want the audit to find some major error. You've already filed. It may make a difference. Then you have to amend your return. So do your audit first, and then we'll do the taxes. I want to go, I think, to the handout,
Okay.
the handout. There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as the federal is concerned, and the state, they have what they call postcards, and those are the 990 in and the 199 in. And use those if ordinarily you have $50,000 or less in gross revenue. That means that over the last 3 years, you haven't grossed more than 150,000. Divided by 3 is 50,000. So I know during COVID, there wasn't a lot of revenue reported. So you may fall into that postcard category, because that 1 year, maybe 2021, was very low. So you want to check with your tax accountant. You don't want to pay $450, $500 to do a 990 EZ if you can file postcard. Nothing against tax preparers, but it is a business. If you do have to do the 990 EC and the 199, the regulars, as Lisa mentioned, it would be good to engage the services of a tax accountant or an accounting firm. Make sure you get approval for that cost from the association. It usually runs around $500 to do that. And they will prepare your 990 EC, your 199, and your RRF1. So they'll do all 3 of those for that amount of money. The Secretary of State incorporated units, and you'll know if you're incorporated, I believe the franchise tax board begins with an 8 or 9 if you're not incorporated, and a 0 if you are, as I recall. But anyway, that's a form that has to be filled out every other year, not every year. And you can do it online. It's really easy. Even I've done it. And it's $20, renewal fee, and ask for basic information. So check on your date that you were incorporated, and then it will be every 2 years after that. So you might want to check, because sometimes that gets, falls through the cracks, and they don't really notify you until, you're in trouble. So you want to make sure you do that every 2 years. I mentioned, okay, this one is raffles. And a raffle permit, that's voluntary. That's not anything that's required. But if you are planning to hold a raffle during the fiscal year, between September 1st and August 31st are their dates covering raffles, then you want to file for that. And I think it's $25, and they will give you
30. It went up to 30.
They raised it?
Yeah.
Oh, because they're so busy up there. Okay, so $30. By the way, the Department of Justice has a 90-day backlog. So if you're checking the verification website for the Department of Justice, that's good to check, but we know that they are currently experiencing a 90-day backlog. I sent in a couple of checks to cover some units because of the new fee, and it took them over a month just to cash the check, and I sent it certified. Anyways, that's just something to expect. Okay, and if you have a raffle permit, you have to file the raffle report at the end of the raffle period, and even if you didn't have one. So you will report 0, because they will then think that you just forgot to file it. So even if you've gotten a permit and you didn't have a raffle after all, you still have to file the report at the end of the year. Okay, and then there's the charitable gaming activities. If you plan on having casino night or whatever, then that's a whole nother registration with the Department of Justice. Okay. What else? Oh, see there's the website I think you were talking about, or maybe we weren't. At the bottom for more details, if you go to that capital website.org PTA leaders tax, it will give you everything. It will lead you to all the forms that you need. So if you're going to file the 990 in postcards or RF1s, then you would go to this website and they will have that for you. Okay. An important thing to remember too, and the postcards are so easy. People get all nervous. Oh, I can't file taxes. I mean, all you have to know basically for the IRS is the name of the school and the address. I mean, it doesn't even ask for any number at all. The California asks for gross revenue, but that's it. So it's pretty easy. I want to emphasize, if you receive any letters, any correspondence from any government agency, the unit needs to let you know as a council, and then you can let me know as the district. Those are very important. Even if it looks bogus, send it in. There's a lot of bogus things out there. Send it in. We'll tell you if it is or not. Because if you ignore those letters, then there's trouble coming. And we can help you with that. Even though we're tax exempt, we're not exempt from penalties. And so if a filing is done late, especially a 990 EC is done late, and you can't prove that you sent it in with, like a certified mail or whatever, they will assess penalties. There's recourse for that. So please, if your unit gets a letter assessing a penalty, then let us know, because there's a process by which we can reduce or eliminate those fees. We throw ourselves on the mercy of the court. We tell them, oh my God, we're volunteers. We didn't know. Golly, we'll do better next time. And they'll say, oh, okay, that's fine. So, so please let us know if any unit gets any letters. Okay.
Before we go on, Flora, there's a question in the chat about that $50,000 threshold and average, that 3-year average.
Oh, yeah. So if you read the IRS guideline, it says you can file a postcard if your gross revenue is normally below 50,000 or below. We're concentrating on the word normally, because sometimes it's over 50,000, sometimes it's under 50,000. So they're saying, okay, because there's fluctuation, could be fluctuation. If you have, let's say you have 53,000 in gross revenue this year, you would think, oh my gosh, I have to do a 990, it's over 50,000. Check the previous 2 years. If the previous 2 years add up to 80,000, then you haven't reached the threshold of 150,000 over a 3-year period. So you can consider the gross revenue of the 2 prior years, and then this one. If it's less than 150,000, you can do a postcard even though your revenue is 53,000. So that's what normally means.
And conversely, if your last 2 years were, say, 100,000 and 100,000, and this year you took a hit and you went down to, say, 40,000, still that normally catches you, and you'd still need to file the 990 EZ, because your total for the 3 years would be 240,000, which is more than a 50,000 average. So
Yes.
it works both ways.
Yeah, it works both ways. They get their money anyway. Okay. Okay, yes, true. Okay, so it's just a matter of, so if you're normally submitting 990 EZs, as Lisa mentioned, you would have for the last 2 years, and you're thinking, oh, I'll do a postcard, check with your accountant. They probably prepared those 990 EZs and they will let you know if you qualify or not. So,
Okay, let's
Okay.
see. Are we
uh,
scooting on to here? Just
Yeah.
here is.
yeah, these are the search resources that are available. So the first one is for 990 ins. So you are able, and the IRS is experiencing a backlog also, but if you file electronically, that should not make a difference. And the 990 in is always filed electronically. New this year for this reporting tax period 2022, 990 EZs must be filed electronically. So I'm happy to report that the district has over 300 units that they are responsible for, and we only have 2 that need to take some action in order not to be revoked this year with the IRS. And one was not their fault, and one is a matter of a 990 postcard. So that's good news for us. No one is in danger of revocation from the IRS. And it's because we worked together so much last year with the council people and our list and Our Lady up north in Sacramento. So pat yourselves on the back. Anyways, so so the 990 ins and 990 EZs are all electronic. The RF1 forms, and these are due to the Department of Justice. The RF form, everyone does it, no matter 990 EZ or 990 in, everybody files an RF1. However, if you did a 990 EZ, you just attach a 990 EZ and file that with your RF1. If you file a postcard, the IRS and the state, and Lisa knows what I'm going to say, doesn't give a rat's patoot how much you earned in gross revenue, because there's no money to be made. So you only made 50,000. The state of California Department of Justice wants to know how you got your money and where you spent it. And so they have what they call a CTTR1 report. That has to go with the RF1 if you file a postcard, because, and we're going to look at it later, but that shows how you got your money and where you spent it. We talked about the incorporation and the tax center, and I think we're good
Talk
here.
about that, yes.
Yeah. Okay, what's next?
Oh, just some general information about.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, a lot of this is unit level stuff. So I don't think we need to go into it in great detail. Um,
I wanted to, well, if I may,
Sure.
I think there's a boo-boo up there. Can you go up to the top?
On this one or the previous one?
See where it says bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, bullet point 4. The Department of Justice changed the fee structure in January, last January, in the middle of a fiscal year. Shame on them, because now it used to be units that gross $25,000 or less didn't have to pay a fee. Now anyone 50,000 or less pays $25. In other words, our units who do not make 25,000 or less than 25,000 now have to pay a fee. Before it was free. Anyway, so this makes bullet point 4 incorrect.
Got it.
So yeah, so the RF1, so the RF1 starting with the 2021, 2022 tax year. So you want to cross out that 2019, 2020, and 2021, 2022.
Mhm.
If you're filing an RF1 for prior years, please use the new form.
Too bad.
Too bad. Because they're charging the fee even though it's for a prior year. So the fee is retroactive. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
I'll try and correct that and we'll try
And
and
send
send
it
out.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you
I
for
just saw that last night. Darn it. Okay.
Okay,
But, you know, government agencies are always changing their rules and changing stuff, and you just, you know, got to keep up. Okay, so,
so scrolling down.
I wanted to mention the 10% rule for the raffle,
Excellent.
because they take that very seriously. So I remember I said that you have to prepare a year-end report of the raffles, and it will ask for how much you made and how much you spent, your administrative cost of the raffle. The administrative cost of the raffle cannot be more than 10% of what you collected. And they take that very seriously. I saw a letter from the Department of Justice that and they said, your expenses are 10% more. We're going to assume you didn't know the rule. And if this happened again, we're going to refer you to the Attorney General. Thank you very much. So I just want to emphasize that. Make sure when you're reporting your raffle, you're not reporting more than 10% expense. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Links,
Anything else? Blah, blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah. And then here's the
Yeah,
annotated.
this is, yeah, the annotated RF1. And this is pretty clear, and you can see where it says less than 50,000 is $25. That's the new form. So you want to make sure you're using the form that has the new fee structure. And it's pretty clear, you know, everything to fill out. Again, if you do a 990 EZ, you will fill out the program expenses and then just attach the 990 EZ. You're done. Okay, if you've done the postcard, then there's another report that we're going to look at, and you do not fill out the program expenses. Yeah, I think all those questions are pretty much the same. And this is the CTTR one we were talking about. And the biggest error that I saw from units filing, so you want to make sure this is correct. Units filing this CTTR1, and you're going to take a look at it, that they do not include the prior year cash balance as miscellaneous income. I don't know why. Well, they thought you cannot report a loss. And so they put the cash balance, your bank account balance, your June 30 bank account balance as miscellaneous income. And that's not correct. Your bank account, you see cash on hand, including balance in checking account at fiscal year end. So your revenues and expenses, they close at year end, but your bank account doesn't. It keeps going on and on. So any money that you've made in the past is included in this balance. So if we look, you know, at the revenue statement, folks were concerned that they were reporting less revenue and more expenses. And that would be a loss where it says, here, go down a little bit more.
Oops, sorry.
A smidge. You see where it says total revenue less total expenses? That would be a negative if your revenue is less than your expenses. That's okay. You can report a loss in your revenue statement because you have the cash in your assets up there to cover that loss. And that's how we reduce excessive balances brought forward, is by incurring losses in the current year. So please inform your units it's okay to show a loss in your revenue statement. All your money is in the cash asset account. Okay,
All
so
right.
that was a big deal. And this sort of answers the age-old question of, is Spiritware program or fundraiser? Well, if you look under programs, CAPTA has put Spiritware and yearbooks as program revenue. And so I would recommend that, because we know that Spiritware, you keep an inventory of Spiritware, and so that would make it a program, and you sell it all. So it's a little tidbit. Towards the end there, you see other revenue and other expense. They want to know what that is. You're not going to get away with other expenses, you know, $14,000. They want to know what that is. So you have to include a list that supports that other expenses, $14,190, teacher appreciation, you know, whatever you spent the money on, just to add up to 14,000. Not a big deal, but they require it. So,
Okay.
that it?
Can I stop sharing?
Oh, that's the last one, sure.
Okay. So we do have the amounts for insurance premiums. I don't know them off the top of my head, so I don't want to spout off any wrong numbers, but I can go ahead and share that with Margaret and whoever else is interested. And then she also asks, can you please explain what a 50-50 raffle is and why it's illegal? So
The 50-50 is not 90-10. So remember, we talked about any kind of raffle or gaming, you have to pay, make 10% administrative costs, because it's a charity. So they want you to solicit prizes for raffles. This is a fundraiser. This is not, you know, like something, you know, that it's supposed to be a charitable work. So a 50-50, you're giving away 50% of the money that you got. And the rule is you can only spend 10% on administrative costs. There's other rules, but we'll just stick with that.
Just to clarify what a 50-50 raffle is
Oh,
that-
I'm Catholic, so I grew up with 50-50.
Well, okay. so you go around selling tickets.
Yeah, and you
right?
just split up the money, and half
winner
goes to
gets-
the organization and half goes to the person.
Yeah. Making assumptions there, Flora.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, sorry. Next, and then we can go to that next slide, Emmy. Thank you.
Oh, other filings, yes. So we talked about the workers' comp, and that form, I think we said will come out in the end of December, it's due in January. To include it, this should include any service providers that come on the campuses. So, or even not even the campuses. They said even tax preparers, if they're an individual, must be on the workers' comp, or they must submit proof of their own workers' comp insurance. So if someone says, no, I have workers' comp, you'll need proof of that. And I think you need to make it part of the submission. I know a tax preparer that does a lot of Long Beach tax returns. We got their workers' comp insurance policy and we sent it in and it was fine. So, but they'll lead you through that form and what you need. So, I'm not sure if you have to pay right away. I think they may invoice you. So if you're filing a workers' comp and you're showing people that you've paid and it's over the $1,000 that you're allowed to have, they will invoice you, I believe. And they will send that invoice to the email that you have provided on the workers' comp form. 1099s, like it says, it's a calendar year, it's not a fiscal year. And this is when you would be paying people to do jobs. I wouldn't think this would be common. We shouldn't be paying people to do things. We get volunteers for that. But let's say, for example, you have an individual that's created a website for you, and you paid that individual, then if it's more than $600 in the calendar year, then you would have to 1099. The raffle report we talked about. On the raffle form, we're 23701D, which is a charitable organization. So there's a lot of choices to check off there, but you'll want to check off the charitable organization, and that's the number that applies to our particular situation. Apparently, there's a liquor license if wine bottles are being used as auction items, but it's not necessary if it's an incidental item in a gift basket. So there you go. Is there anything else?
I think that's it for your chunk, Flora. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty. So just sort of a wrap up and some odds and ends that we have. To please review the handouts. If you haven't received them, then please email one of us and then we can forward that to you. I think Emmy put her email address in the chat. Make sure that treasurers are using a permanent ink pen, such as a Uniball rather than a ballpoint pen, just to avoid the whole check washing, possible fraud. If your units or council is making a donation to the school district, not a donation, a gift with strings for a specific purpose, then make sure you have a signed fiduciary agreement that says, oh, so-and-so PTA is giving $2,000 for, I don't know, what, field trips. And so you want to make sure that that fiduciary agreement, which is in the CAPTA website, will kind of give the strings and say, if that money is not used for what we want it to be used for, then we get that money back. Okay. Units should be sending a copy of their minutes to council. And so then that way council can review the minutes and then make sure that your units are being transparent as far as their financial reports and that getting their budgets and presenting their audits and all that. So you can't be at every single unit meeting, but if you get their minutes, then at least you get a sense of what's going on and making sure that they're following policy. And I think that is, oh, here we go. One more. If you need a letter of determination or something that shows the PTA's tax exempt status, make sure you go ahead and email this email address, LOD, which is short for letter of determination, at capta.org. The one thing is that you have to be caught up with all of your filings before Donna will issue you a letter of determination. So there's another incentive to make sure that all your filings are caught up.
Lisa, I just wanted to mention an example of an LOD of a unit. A unit opened a bank account 38 years ago, and they found out that it was opened incorrectly this year. So, they had to, you know how these banks are getting so strict and everything, and they were asking for all kinds of things. But what we did, we showed what we get with a letter of determination. They didn't have one, but I had one that I had requested before. And it comes with 7 or 8 different documents, founding documents. And it shows the relationship between the units and the council and the district as far as taxes are concerned. Just, information that, just really onerous. But I gave it to the bank and I said, pick out something that you need that will work. And it worked. And they got what they needed. They opened the account and everything was fine. I would recommend every president of a unit request a letter of determination at the beginning of the year, every year, just to have it on file, to have it current and stick it in your bylaws, because you never know when you're going to need it. And fundraisers, sometimes they ask for that. You know, your unit may want to have a fundraiser. Can we see your LOD? And, you know, it's not there. So I would just that you would recommend to your units to request, and the president has to request it, the LOD, and she'll send you just gobs of information, and just keep it on file.
All right, excellent. Good job. I like that sort of pick what you need.
Yeah,
approach to it.
here, what do you need? Because they were using all this terminology. You know how banks use different terminology and everybody uses, it's like, just take it.
Take everything and
Yeah,
let them
pick
choose.
something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Another thing is to make sure that your units are aware of audits, and they're not like gotcha exercises. They're just merely a way to make sure that that proper procedure and transparency is being observed, so that it turns into less of a scary thing and more of a, hey, here's how we can do better thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I know this is, oh, here, go ahead.
No,
Jump
just
on
a
that
little
soapbox.
thing. Because training never covers, you know, like judgment. You know, and you have to exercise judgment. If you have a unit that gets the check request signed 50 times and they missed one, come on. The auditor is there to make sure the procedures are in place and being followed. I would say, using my judgment, those procedures are in place and being followed. They missed one. So this is up to the auditor. It's the auditor's judgment. But I would say, what is the benefit of putting that forward as a finding as opposed to a cost? But the benefit is, okay, you went by the letter of the law. The letter of the law said every single check request has to be signed. What's the spirit of the law? The spirit of the law is that policies and procedures are in place. So the negative could be that the treasurer gets upset, they're volunteers, they're doing their best, they missed one. So all I'm saying is, you know, as Lisa was saying, this is not punitive or gotcha. It should be training and helpful. Repeat findings is a whole nother matter, but little findings like that, just measure the cost and the benefit. Thanks.
All righty. Okay. Now it's time. Now it's time for my soapbox here. Things to consider if a principal asks to deposit grant money into a PTA account. Hopefully by this time, you know that if it's money that is paid to the school, then PTA depositing that money would be commingling of funds. I have a whole soapbox thing about, you know, sometimes principals can pressure, suggest, whatever, that PTAs do certain things. And so make sure that you're supporting your units so that they don't feel obligated to allow commingling of money or allow principals to suggest programs off the top of their head without going through the usual budget process. Alrighty, so that's part of what councils are there for, is to support their units in trickier ways than just showing them how to do treasurer's reports. Alrighty, and I'm going to go ahead and, oh, here we go. Here's some more resources. Some of them are actually repeats of the training and resources before. And I'm going to go ahead and kick off a poll here and tell us what you think. And this is not a right or wrong answer. This is just, what do you think? What is the biggest change from being, say, a unit financial officer and making that jump up to the council level? Because I'm interested in knowing, because if we need to emphasize some areas more than others, then that would be a good thing to know. And then while we're letting you guys do that, we have a question in the chat about if council is collecting the unit's minutes, who reviews the minutes? And I would, off the top of my head, I would say it just kind of, that's a thing that your team needs to figure out. Who would be best to review the minutes. I mean, it could be the secretary because they can make sure that the minutes are in the correct format and include the right information. So that would be good. There's something to be said for other people. If you're looking specifically for financial stuff, then maybe you want your financial team to kind of cast an eye over that. But if you have confidence in your secretary knowing what's supposed to be on the minutes and knowing that they will flag that financial stuff is missing, then you could have your secretary do it. Okay. All righty. I'm just going to go ahead and end this poll because we're coming to the end of our time here in poll, and we'll share the results. And it's a little bit of everything, right? Obviously, taking care of finances for council, that's sort of the basic thing that people understand is a difference. But being responsible for training units, that's sort of a step up, right? It's one thing to do something yourself, and it's another thing to show someone else how to do it. Having to be a role model for units, that can be kind of tricky too, because maybe you're inclined to slack off on something, but it's like, oh, all these units, they're seeing what you do at your council meetings. So you want to make sure that you're providing a good role model for them. Being responsible for passing along units payments to district. So that entails you taking an active role and reminding the units, okay, remember to pass along your memberships. Remember that thus and such is due on a given date, right? So you have to facilitate that sort of back and forth communication. And then being responsible for passing along units, paperwork, and filings to district. And this is useful just because, if we have a unit that's in some kind of financial trouble because they didn't file, whatever, if our records are as complete as possible, then that makes it easier for us to help you and that unit. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We can stay on for a few minutes if anyone has any other questions, but just wanted to thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful. If you have any suggestions as far as what other topics are good for council financial officers to learn about as opposed to unit financial officers, then go ahead and send us an email or contact us however you want to, and give us those suggestions. Our emails are in the handouts, and if you don't have the handouts yet, then go ahead. Emmy, you want to put your email in the chat one more time so that anyone who didn't receive the handouts can grab that real quick and send you an email. Okay, great. All righty. So thank you very much, and have a great day.